afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The Real Thomas Jefferson, today featuring philosophical conversations with Thomas Jefferson. The aim of this show is to get better acquainted with Thomas Jefferson as a philosopher and moralist, and through that, perhaps to get better acquainted with ourselves for an exchange with a noteworthy moralist. Will likely be beneficial for both those who aspire towards moral betterment. Excuse me. I am your host, George Gorey, formerly a captain of the California Highway Patrol and currently a criminal investigator with the local district attorney's office in the San Francisco Bay Area. Dr. H is a professor of philosophy and history who taught at institutions such as the University of Pittsburgh, University of Michigan, and Rutgers University, Camden. He is author, editor of over 70 books and nearly 400 published essays, formal and informal, on topics such as ethics, ancient philosophy, science, psychoanalysis, and critical thinking. His current research is on Thomas Jefferson. He is acknowledged by many scholars to be the world's foremost authority and has published over 300 essays, formal and informal, and has 30 books on Thomas Jefferson. He also writes about Ukraine.
And little Jeff has got his pink winter sweater on because it's getting, as he says,
it's good because it's getting cold in Michigan, right?
Getting cut, as he says it. You can't say cold, he says cut. Get up here, Jeff. I'm at the Natural Bridge here, or some depiction of it, right? And
it's a beautiful depiction.
You still are at San Francisco where you left your heart.
I am, but I will have something different, I think, for next week. I think I'll be in a different location.
You will. Did you remind our viewers that the names will be changed to protect the innocent?
Yes, they will. Just like in Dragnet, of course.
That was a great show, wasn't it? That was
great show. Jack Webb, right? I mean, that was the old school.
I am surprised that wasn't your hero, for God's sakes, you know.
Jack Webb. I did like the show a lot.
I did too. It was so a great corny. Show. It's corny. It was so corny. It's hard not to be likable. So all right, are we ready to rock here, bud?
We are, and today we're going to discuss Jefferson as the guardian of the natural bridge, and Dr. Holacek's book, Thomas Jefferson, Guardian of the Natural Bridge. We're going to talk about the aesthetics of the bridge and Jefferson's view on its beauty. And let's just get into the questions here, Doctor. And I see you have your Colonel epaulette on, so you are definitely in your rank today, which is good.
Question in my own world.
That's right. In your own world, you are the colonel, right? So question number one is there are many fantastic stories about the natural bridge, Native American tribes warring over and near the bridge, George Washington climbing on one of the steep walls and carving GW into it, and two men discovering buried treasure near the natural bridge. How does your book compare to these stories?
Well, if you read a lot of the guidebooks that they sell at Natural Bridge in their museum, you get accounts of all these stories, and you know they're cutesy, and you know they may be rooted in true stories. It's difficult to there's no way to confirm. You know, there is a GW. I've seen it at the Natural Bridge. I'll bring up some pictures as we go on in the show. So stay tuned if you want to see a real picture of Natural Bridge that I took. It's a beautiful state park. They made it in state park. But as it is, it's, you know, the Natural Bridge for a lot of people is bucket list sort of stuff. Is that you go there, you see it, it's fantastic. But if you're going to, are you going to visit again? Probably not, because there are other memorabilia, other wonders, natural wonders of the world that you might want to see instead, right? But it's certainly something you might put on your bucket list. Now, as I say in my introduction, and I was wondering if the people of Natural Bridge wanted to publish it, they declined my book. I think it's because I sort of castigate some of their stories and in other of their pamphlets and stuff. But I'm wabi-sabi, meaning I find beauty in simplicity, in things the way they are, not in in fabulizing about stuff. So I think if I try to tell the story in the book about the Natural Bridge, about how Jefferson purchased it in 1774 after he writes the summary review where he makes pretty much an ass of King George III, and yet Britain the same year sells him the bridge. So my book, I think, if you're like me, if you're wabi-sabi, you like what is natural, what's simple, what's clean, what's honest, what's true, I think you'll really enjoy the book, because I think the real story about Jefferson's ownership is quite a fantastic story.
That's the thing is that I know that when you read like his writings in the Notes of State in Virginia, I know we'll get to that. It was one of his great treasures in life. Um,
Yeah, he called it at one point the world's most astonishing treasure or something like that. And certainly it's not true, but it's been there. It's quite a moving work. But there are so many
I
other.
plan to go there someday myself. Which takes us to the second question: how and why did Thomas Jefferson acquire the bridge?
Um, well, he had visited it. His father was a surveyor. We know that. And at some point, he had visited it, and I will read his description of the bridge. He visits it at first in 1767, and he gives us a very elaborate depiction. He talks about the trees that grow on it, the type of stone that the bridge comprises, the structural integrity of the bridge, the weakness of the stream below it, Cedar Creek. In dry seasons, the view of North Mountain from above the bridge, and he talks about the large fallen rocks, the debris of logs, brush, and planks that are evidence of flooding and so forth, and the growth of small cedars on relatively level spots on the precipice. That's why the creek is called Cedar Creek. You get some cedars growing along there. Cedars like water. He gives us, I'll show in a bit, his own drawing where he actually measures out the bridge and all of its dimensionality and all of its wonder, and which is a wonder, which is again a display for Jefferson's love of mathematics. Now, he wasn't a serious mathematician, but he arithmetized, he geometrized whenever the opportunity availed itself, and he was fond of applying mathematics and geometry, even trigonometry throughout his day. He just loved mathematics. So in 1774, that's the year he writes his summer review. As I said, he applies for ownership of the 150-acre parcel of land that contains the bridge. That parcel of land was relatively worthless, other than the fact that it housed the natural bridge, but it was a metabilia, a natural wonder, natural metabilia, something that inspires awe and wonder that very few people enjoyed because it was hard to get there. You had to traipse through, around trees and bushes to get there. Not a lot of people visited it, and
There was no national park like now or state park.
no, there wasn't. So he pays £5 or $6 for the land, and he pays for a survey of it, and he uses what poles are. I've discovered poles are units of measure that are 16 and a half feet. And we'll talk a little bit about it, but I mean, he had problems with it all of his life. And I can't go into all that, but there were property disputes at the time where neighbors Jefferson was only visited it a handful of times in his life because he was preoccupied with other things. And some neighbors, he was told, were trying to take over parts of his land. So this was difficult because when you measured out parcels of land, you did it by putting chops in trees, by using natural boundaries. Well, this is the stream that bounds my property. Well, what happens with streams? They can change their course.
Of course.
You could lose property, you can gain property on account of it, and trees fall down where there's this chop or two chops in the tree. If the tree falls down, you're at pains to locate your property. And so people would avail themselves of the land. It wasn't very farmable land, very stony and rocky, but it had wood, and wood was always, and it was mineral rich, right? It was used for making shot during the Revolutionary War. Jefferson rented out a parcel of land on the bridge for people who made shot for the War of 1812, not the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812.
So this was one of his obviously one of his treasures. So the next question is, you argue that Thomas Jefferson was the natural bridge's greatest ambassador. Why is that so?
Well, to show that, I'm going to have to use screen share, and I'll bring up some pictures here so we can get an appreciation for what Thomas Jefferson saw in the bridge. Let me as much as I can. The first here, as you can see, is just my own picture of the natural bridge. You have park benches, as it were, and it's paved over, and but you still, it's a really sort of majestic thing. We're still at a decent distance from it, so you can't really get the perspective of. It'd help if there was a human being standing directly under the bridge, so you get a perspective of the bridge. But this was what, about a year and a half ago, and when there weren't a lot of people walking along, I got a snapshot of the bridge. I got one from that part and one from. This was the parcel of land that Jefferson draws up. It's 157 acres that houses the bridge. You see in the middle, he says Natural Bridge Survey. So he wanted to have it surveyed. Now he buys this property not because it's of any value. It's of no value. He rents it out, during the War of 1812 to make a few bucks. But he's, for the most part, owns the bridge, and he owns it till his death, even though it doesn't make him any money. In fact, he has to pay taxes on it every year. Loses money, and he wanted to preserve it. That's the only reason why he bought the property. He knew he couldn't spend much time visiting it. Now, here's his description in Query 5 of Note on Virginia. We can see it. It's on the ascent of a hill. Why don't you read this? I'll be talking too much. If you'd read it for us, please.
This is from him. This is Jefferson Query 5. It is on the ascent of a hill, which seems to have cloven through its length by some great convulsion. The fissure just at the bridge is by some at measurements 270 feet deep, by others only 205. It is about 45 feet wide at the bottom and 90 feet at the top. This,
now look at the picture to the right that Jefferson draws. He's got 230 feet, 45 feet at the bottom, 90 feet at the top, just like he says here.
And he says is 90 feet at the top, and this of course determines the length of the bridge and its height from the water. Its breadth in the middle is about 60 feet, but more at the ends, and the thickness of the mass at the summit of the arch is about 40 feet. A part of this thickness is constituted by a coat of earth, which gives growth to many large trees. The residue, with the hill on both sides, is one solid rock of limestone. The arch approaches the semi-elliptical form, but the larger axis of the ellipsis, which would be the chord of the arch, is many times longer than the transverse.
Yeah, notice how he's got that, other than he's got 200, some people say 270 feet from bottom to the top. He's got 234 feet. He's got 45 feet across, as he says here. He's got 90 feet wide at the top across, and he's got 40 feet of land at the top of the bridge. We go back to the bridge, right? So he's got 40 feet here, right? 200, he's got what, 270 feet, did he say?
70 feet.
Or 200 or 30, I don't remember what he said, but he talks about he's got 230 feet at from the top of the opening to the bottom to the creek, and so he's got to draw it up and measure out everything. So you imagine he's got his measuring tools with him. It's kind of funny. And then we have Query 5 again giving us a. You can't read the whole thing here because of our thing. So now you can. Can you get us through that?
I can see that. Yeah. Query 5 says, through the sides of this bridge are provided in some parts with a parapet of fixed rocks, yet few men have resolution to walk to them and look over into the abyss. You involuntarily fall on your hands and feet, creep to the parapet, and peep over it. Looking down from this height about a minute gave me a violent headache. If the view from the top be painful and intolerable, and that from below is delightful in an equal extreme, it is impossible for the emotions arising from the sublime to be felt beyond what they are here. So beautiful an arch, so elevated, so light, and springing as if it were up to heaven. The rapture of the spectator is really indescribable. The fissure, continuing narrow, deep, and straight for a considerable distance above and below the bridge, opens a short but very pleasing view of the North Mountain on one side and the Blue Ridge on the other. At the distance, each of them is about 5 miles.
I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, so we get this. Your question was, I call him the largest ambassador for the bridge of anybody in the history of the world. This is what he writes. Now, if you read this, you're going to want to come and see it. You're on top of that and you're scared as hell. Looking down gave me a violent headache, as he says. And then he goes, but if the view from the top be painful and intolerable, if you get below and you look up It's extraordinarily, indescribably, ineffably beautiful, right? So he's talking about, as I mentioned to you before, the as it were, of aesthetics, of theory of what is beautiful was really being thought out, talked about at the time. There are many aestheticians, Lord Kames being one, and other such people talking about what is beautiful. And Jefferson here is just following a lot of people. Look at how he writes so beautifully, so remarkably.
Very much so.
Yeah, and people always say, well, he's exaggerating, but no, he's following the language of aesthetics here. He's trying to capture his feelings of in the first. He's trying to capture his feelings of the sublime, of dread, of fear, of awe, of reverence, just like a Gothic cathedral from inside looking up or outside looking at the thing as a whole. It's dark, it's scary, it's gloomy, and it speaks of a supreme being who's much more powerful than you. Then if you go and you go below and you look up, you see it's remarkably beautiful. You look through the fissure, you can see the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's just remarkably beautiful. Yeah, a lot of people, when I go there, carve their names in there. So I call this in my book, The Epistemology of the Sublime, where when the immediate feeling, beauty is something that's not so much immediate. It creeps up on you and it plays on you, works with you. Something comes to be seen as beautiful. The sublime is an immediate feeling. You're afraid. I go on top and look down. I'm afraid. And I realize just how long the fall is. I just look how majestic and fearful the natural bridge really is.
Right.
And at some point, the more, as I talk about it in this view, the more that you acclimate yourself to what is fearful, what is sublime, it becomes beautiful. And the sublimity seems to evanesce, to disappear. So, I mean, in the rest, what we'll look at is Marquis de Chastellux, friend of Jefferson from the Revolutionary War and so forth, from his days in France, is the first European to visit it. And because of Jefferson's notes on Virginia, he has to visit the Natural Bridge, and he does. And he has an artist friend come, gives us one of his first depictions through a drawing, I believe, of the Natural Bridge. And this is it. And he puts it in his book as he talks about his travels through colonial America, which is America at the time after the Revolutionary War. And this is the first picture we have of it. Notice at the base to the right, we have a human being. And it looks like, is that a teepee?
It looks like it to me.
It does too. And it's got sort of like twin, it looks like a teepee. It could be a Native American. I did another video on the Natural Bridge, and I talk about how he had people squatting on the land and using it for farming and so forth. Here's a depiction from, I'll have to close to get the name, from Joshua Shaw, and I'll bring this back up into a large picture. And there's a term artists often use called chiaroscuro. It's the use of dark and light for effect in paintings or drawings and artworks. Notice how we have it here, and where the artist, what the artist makes dark can either suck you in or pull you away from it. And the tendency is to be drawn to the light. Now, where do we have all the light appearing? What's the brightest part really of this picture? Where is your eye drawn? Let me ask you.
Well, the lightest part is obviously the mountains in the background, the river down below, and then the area just behind the dark figure on the edge.
Yeah,
and then everything else in the background is more dark.
You look quickly at the picture. Where do you get sucked in?
To me, the river and the mountains.
River. To me, it's sort of it's to the figure, because this part is almost exaggeratedly bright.
It is.
And
it is exactly behind him.
and you notice how the figure is presumably dressed all in black, the black hat and
Yes.
everything. to,
Yeah.
so it sort of takes you either away from the figure or you're drawn to the figure, and you get a feel of the sublime of what is fearful and dreadful at the top of the mountain because the figure is all in black. So
It
I
makes
get,
sense. It draws the attention to him.
yeah, I get sucked into this area right here, to the figure, to looking down, to the creek going underneath the natural bridge. This part is very, very bright. This part here is bright. This whole part right here, it's beautifully done. And you get, some of the trees growing on and various different types of trees. So here we get Frederick Edmund Church in 1852. This is a very beautiful depiction.
It
And
is.
yeah, you're looking at the bridge from the front as the picture I gave. And here, where does your eye go? Let me ask you where, my
Well,
eye
to me,
goes.
it's at the top.
Right, me too. Almost right here
Yes.
to this ledge. And then secondarily, I get sucked into this sort of keyhole here. It's almost like um, it's unreal. It's almost like, of course, it's a painting, but it's almost like it's not real. It's painted into it. It gives you
Mhm.
that impression because it's just the light, right? There's almost a sharp line at the bottom and at the top and on the sides where it becomes really bright. And you get a lot of detail here. Notice the figures, a man
Yes.
and a somewhat reclined woman in the small creek passing through here. Very beautiful, beautifully done. And of course, the colors are superbly earthy:
They
orange,
are.
yellow, green, black, dark brown, right?
It's
And
such a
then
beautiful painting that you could see at first glance, even though I know it's from 1852, you can
yeah,
see that it almost looks like a photograph. It's so
yeah,
I
it
like.
almost, it's really beautifully done. That's a good point. I I agree. You can see quite a bit of detail on the trees that are in the forefront and
Yeah.
lack of detail. Some of the prominent trees have some detail, but lack of detail, as if it just were a photograph. And you always get, artists always painted figures in, as I told you before, one of the tricks in a painting was paint themselves into. Um,
Mhm.
well, I was
Yeah.
looking at some of Maria Cosway's figures, and she's got the 12 muses or something like that. She's painting the muses, and the one in the middle seems to stand out. And I was wondering if Cosway painted herself into that picture, and I suspect she did. So artists would
Yeah, I
often
would
paint
think so.
themselves, but you want people in the painting for perspective to show you just how large it is. And here's David Johnson in another one that's kind of beautiful. If you can see my cursor, you got
Mhm.
a
Yes.
person right here, and you've got another person there, it seems to me, perhaps with a dog. Is that
Looks like it.
could be. So you have perspective here. You have the creek. Um, this one is a bit more surreal than the one prior to it. Let's look at this is from the other side, presumably. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it looks like from the opposite end.
That's hard to say.
It-
No, it's because you got the V here and you got the V here. It's just a more exaggerated depiction of the same thing. It's from the front. But again, you don't have so much chiaroscuro. I mean, you get the darkness of the crick here. It almost, but again, I think, would you agree you get sucked into the top here? It's
you
almost
do.
like a heat.
It's magnificent the way it was painted, and it draws you in.
And you're focusing on what? The trees or the rock?
I'm focusing on the rock. I mean, the
Yeah,
trees obviously add to it, but the rock is
absolutely.
magnificent.
And here it's not so much that, this is all, like you said, this church is like a photograph. It's so good. But here there is perhaps exaggeration to
Mhm.
this V shape here is exaggerated, and the coloration of the rock is perhaps poignantly exaggerated
I
uh,
think so.
to create a sense of majesty. But I mean, there are all sorts of, I want to focus on a couple poems right now. So we talked about, I'll go back to this painting. We talk about some of the artists, and they're just over the centuries, a lot of artists trying to capture it with. Now, part of the problem with trying to capture what is sublime, if visiting a work, say a church, a Gothic church, cathedral, Notre Dame in Paris or something, or the Natural Bridge or the Grand Canyon, is, I think, let me ask your opinion here. Out of these two paintings,
Right.
which captures your fancy more? The first, churches, or which one?
Churches. For me,
Yeah, me
churches,
too.
because of the amazing detail in it. They're both beautiful paintings, but the church one does because it literally looks like he has so much detail to me. It literally looks like a photograph, but that's not true from
But that's what
1852.
he's aiming at in some sense, and I get it. And I'll try to explain by appeal to poetry. This was one of the problems that one esthetician that Jefferson read, whose name escapes me right now, was always talking about. Jefferson really enjoyed this person quite a bit. Talking about trying to capture the sublime. How do you capture the sublime? So here a person just paints it. What's going on here? Is this person painting it? He's exaggerating
He is. He's exaggerating the colors and the textures as opposed to the other one.
to show it. And look at how dangerous this part looks down here. The crick is
It does
just
look
black.
dangerous.
There are, I'm noticing for the first time, there's fallen timber
Mhm.
around.
Very
This
rugged looking.
person, and it looks like when you go to it, the crick is very unassuming. It's sort of like this. It's not anything dangerous, right? But this person makes it look like the whole thing. You could fall into the crick and drown. He's exaggerating, and this is a terrible depiction in some measures of the natural bridge, because you can't capture something sublime by making it more sublime. You fail
Right.
to understand it. You know what I mean? You fail to understand the sublime if you make it more sublime. And that's even more evident in poetry. Imagine, and let's look at this poem by William Maxwell, 1816, while Jefferson lived. And I talked to you prior to the show about this and what my beef is. I don't like this poem, and I'll tell you why. Hail to thy bridge, romantic nature, hail! Oh, more than true, what I esteemed a tale. We have rhyme all throughout. How light the wonder of that magic arch from cloud to cloud for angel bands to march, so lightly posed upon the downy air for art to view with rapture and despair. But lost in wonder, I can only gaze while silence owns the impotence of praise. The wording is beautiful. The silence owns the impotence of praise. I can't praise it enough. I'm lost in wonder. I can't praise. Words can't capture it. I can only gaze. Now, what did I tell you I don't like about it?
Well, then he goes into a huge description in the rest of the poem of it,
Yeah,
where he
something
says
I can't capture in words, I'm going to capture in words.
right,
The poem,
contradictory, or not contradictory, but
well,
opposing each other, inconsistent.
yeah, it's inconsistent. It's just, it's almost like leave off the poem right here. It's short, but maybe, or you can work and make the first part more elaborate, longer, and then end off. I lost in wonder, I can only gaze with solid owns the impetus of praise, though goes on to talk about the beauty of the whole thing. What a lot of artists do, let's look at the other. This is Sam Kercheval, 1819. He's a friend of Jefferson, wrote this. Jefferson wrote to him in 1816 this wonderful letter. You want to give a shot reading this? I don't know how good you are reading poetry.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so he says, "Oh, though eternal architect divine, all thy beauty, thy works do shine. Permit me thus to sing. Who can this towering arch explore and not thy sovereign power adore, eternal King? Awed at first sight, my blood was chilled, my trembling limbs and nerves are thrilled. Beneath this splendid pile, my mind, however, was soon on flame to adore the great builder's name, viewing the heavenly smile. Didst thou, O God, this arch uprear, to make us trembling mortals start and humbly own thy name? Or didst thou build it for thy pleasure, to prove thy power without measure, and spread eternal fame? Whatever the motive or the plan, it far exceeds the art of man. The grandeur of the scheme shows that the builder lives on high, beyond that blue ethereal sky, and wields a hand supreme.
Now, Kercheval's, in my estimation, his mastery of poetic language is not as good as the other Maxwell's. But at least, he doesn't suffer the same problem we have with Maxwell's poem. He says, well, I can't capture it so sublime. I can't capture in words. And he goes on to give us another 10,000 words or so. Now, I hope you're not going to get in trouble as a hard-nosed cop for reading poetry on the air.
No, I think we'll be fine.
Anybody going to give you a few digs? Oh, you're reading poetry.
Probably.
What's going on? George, what the hell's
Probably,
wrong with you?
but that's okay though, right?
That's okay. Yeah, no, I like poetry, and we'll do a show on Jefferson and poetry. I've written a lot. I have a long chapter on the book on that. But here we got is just someone praising God.
Yeah,
right? Oh,
absolutely.
the eternal divine, architect divine, all beauty, thy works do shine. And then he focuses on the natural bridge, right? This again is, people would look at something like this. There must be a God, because how can
work of God? Yeah.
How can this occur by nature? Well, of course, Darwin shows us how very easily this can occur by nature. And Jefferson himself gives an explanation of presumably how this happened over time through the creek, running into the rocks and so forth over time. And but it inspires one to sing the praises of God, and that's all he's trying to do here.
Which I think Jefferson would have appreciated.
Yeah, I don't have any other. Sometimes we can go back to a couple final words. Go back to the picture of it. I wish they wouldn't have the walkway there, but I guess you have to have it for visitors. Jefferson really loved the bridge, and he was the preserver of the bridge. And what do I have in my title on the handout? Title of my book, I can't remember. I'm asking what it was.
It is
Guardian.
Thomas Jefferson, Guardian of the Natural Bridge.
Yes, and I talk about I chose the term guardian. Publisher wanted me to use preserver. I said no, because Jefferson calls himself the guardian. The publisher said, well, the word guardian has, like militaristic implications, like someone's there with a gun or something, perhaps. And that might be, but Jefferson used the term guardian. And he was a preserver throughout his life of natural wonders. He loved the bridge. And as I say in the book, he would have hated to see what they're doing to it today. Not that they're doing anything really bad, but you've got this natural wonder, and someone comes visit it one time. How are you going to get them to visit it a second time? Well, you can have weddings there. You can have events there, sporting events, or I think they had at some point, they would recreate the creation of the world by God in 7 days. They would have a display at night for that. So they had all sorts of things, canoeing going on, ice skating going on to get people to come there. And you can understand the people own it, need to make money. If it's a natural park, you need to make money, costs money to preserve it. But once you go that route, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the intent of a national park, of a state park or national park is obviously to preserve the beauty. And I get that. And we live in a more modern society, obviously, than he did. But you can also see, like where you were talking about where the walkway is, that it kind of takes away from the beauty a little bit. It doesn't make it any more awe-inspiring or sublime, but I could see where, our modern sensibilities kind of, take away from it, the way we do things.
Yeah, I think Jefferson would have hated the walkway.
I think so too. And the benches and all that stuff.
Yeah,
they kind of just take up space.
Yeah, it just was to him a remarkable, I call it mirabilia, a wonder, natural wonder. And he was wabi-sabi. He liked it in its pure simplicity, didn't want to see hotels that they have all over the place around there for people who might want to stay and spend more than one day. But they do have a nice natural park, and you can walk around the contours of the creek and see uh, the mineral mine there.
That
And
makes sense. I mean, in modern times, I mean, people, like you said, you hit the nail on the head at the beginning. People have kind of a bucket list mentality, and that's modern America, modern people, but it does somewhat take away from it.
uh, and like I say, he was the guardian of the bridge, and he wanted to preserve it in its pristine simplicity. He didn't want, and to that end, he was highly successful all throughout his life. And obviously, when he died, I tell the story what happened to the bridge to today, how many different owners there were of the bridge, and what happened to the bridge after he died, because obviously he was in such remarkable debt, well over $1 million in today's money in debt. And people who creditors came for his slaves. He had to sell his slaves to get money, and he had to sell Monticello and so forth. So, and of course, he had to sell the natural bridge. There's nothing he could keep, and it's the book is a really remarkable story. I undertook it because a friend of mine, Art Scher, who's a very good historian, wrote a paper on the bridge, and I thought, well, geez, there's much more that needs to be said about this paper.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about another. He let a black freed slave, someone who bought Patrick Henry was his name, and he let him and his wife squat on the bridge, near the bridge, and farm some of it. And he says, so as long as you pay the taxes every year, but for the most part, whenever taxes were due, Jefferson paid them for Patrick Henry. So as much as Jefferson presumably hated black people, he let a freed slave squat on his land and farm it. And there was payback because Henry was very responsible, very caring, and Henry would indicate if there were any sorts of troubles going on, people were trying to appropriate or misappropriate his land. So it's a really, I say in another video, and maybe I'll link this up at the end of the video, but it's really a nice story about Jefferson's supposed racism. Guy hates blacks with a passion, but yet he let a black person gratis squat on his land as long as the guy and his wife. And then when
as long as they took care of it.
Yeah, and then when his wife, the interesting thing is when he died, Patrick Henry, the owners, Jefferson's grandson, and so forth, still owned the bridge for a while, and they let her stay on it. And even as the property passed, she still stayed on it because she could tell visitors the story about how she met Thomas Jefferson and things about but that's a really cool story, isn't it?
Great story.
Great story. All right. What are we doing? I hope this was pretty interesting. What
I thought it was quite good, very
Thank
enjoyable.
You for your help as usual.
Of course. And next week we have, hopefully it's either going to be next week or the week after. The next two shows are going to be possibly Robert Turner, author of the Scholars Commission Report. Dr. Turner will talk more about his disclosures and his study of the avowed Jefferson-Hemings affair. And then we're going to do a show on Native Americans. Those are going to be over the next couple of weeks. In what order, we don't quite know yet.
We don't quite know. Well, you've been very busy with things going on in your life, and I've been very busy. I just finished a draft of my book on Jefferson's Declaration of Independence, and I want to send that out hopefully tomorrow to publishers, even though it's still in draft form. It occurred to me, as I told you, that we have in 2026 is going to be the 200th anniversary of Jefferson's death and the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So it'll be a topical, if I do justice to the topic, it'll be a very topical book. It comes out at a really cool time. All right, partner, I want to thank you for your help and walking us through as usual. We'll do this again next week. Okay.
TTFN, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.